Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out to Comic Book Club Live. Please give it up for your hosts, Alex, Justin, and Pete.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to Comic Book Club. I'm Alex.
I'm Justin.
I'm Pete. And that's our man in the booth, Booth Man Prime. And guys, thank you so much for coming out to the show tonight.
Yeah,
Very excited to have you here.
Excited to have
we
you.
have two amazing guests for you. Yeah. So I think we got to get right to it. We got to get right to the show.
Get right to it. All right, okay.
Let's bring them right out.
No time. Let's do it. There's nothing else you guys
no time for
There's nothing you want to talk about?
No, Pete doesn't have anything planned, so we're going to go right into it, right, Pete?
I wanted to talk about Puke Machine, but you guys didn't want to do that.
No, I don't know. Listen, so we should mention Lock and Key. Have any of you seen it on Netflix already?
All right,
yes, it's an audio podcast. You can say woo or whatever. There we go. So we did a podcast, Lock and Key Unlocked, which recapped the volumes of the comic book, and then we're going through the episodes of the series.
Yes.
Justin brought up a story about a puke machine that he worked with. If you want to know what the puke machine is, we don't have time here to talk about it today.
That's ridiculous.
But we definitely get very in-depth on it on our Lock and Key podcast. So that's where you can check it out. Lock and Key Unlocked. Make sure to subscribe.
You're a horrible person.
So if you subscribe to Lock and Key Unlocked, you unlock the secret episode you can only get that describes the puke machine. So there you go.
This is out of hand.
I'm very excited about the guests that we have tonight. They're most involved in a new book called Big Black Stand at Attica. One is the writer, the other is the creative consultant. Ladies and gentlemen, Jared Reinmuth and Pat Kennedy.
Yeah, come on out.
All right, come on out.
Right over here.
Hello.
Great to have you. Welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, guys. Thank
my
you
gosh.
so much.
Thanks so excited.
Much for having us, gentlemen. It's really a pleasure and an honor.
And an honor.
Oh,
wow, okay.
No, we're honored to have you. So it's an honor all around. Also, we're honored to have this audience.
Yeah.
What an honor.
Oh,
Welcome, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this honor. Any other things we're honored about? We want to, Pete?
Honored about Oscars, obviously, just happened. So it
Right.
feels
Congratulations,
nice to
by the way,
celebrate.
Pete.
Pete, you're an Oscar winner.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's get the show going.
We should say what Pete had a parasite in his
Intestinal
which
parasite,
inspired the movie.
It's true.
Congratulations
Thank you for coming on. So there's a new book coming out from Archaia. Is it Archaia or Archaia?
I think Archaia.
I think it's Archaia, which is a subprint of Boom Studios.
Right.
Yes.
Studios,
Okay.
yes.
That's the main reason I wanted to have you on, was to clarify how it's pronounced. So Big Black, this is a true story, adapted in graphic novel form.
Yes.
And we were talking about this a little bit backstage. This kind of started as, should it be a movie idea? Should it be something else?
Yes.
And then it very quickly morphed into a comic book.
Yes. Well, Big Black, obviously, is co-author with me, and we started back in 1997. So it's a good thing that I work fast. We saw it as a movie. He was a huge fan of the movies. Westerns, believe it or not, was his favorite genre. He loved Shane, and so I even at one point had a draft where I included him watching Shane on television, I think. So the idea was to do a screenplay, and we started out just as a screenplay treatment. And we were working on the cases in Buffalo at the time, and we would ride around during the day, going to soul food restaurants, driving around, and I would interview him, and then I would write it all out longhand. Didn't even have a computer back then.
Wow.
Wrote it out longhand on legal pads, and then would go into his room and read it to him.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
And he would
Did he live in Buffalo?
He did not live in Buffalo. He's a Bed-Stuy guy.
Wait,
yeah.
why were you in Buffalo?
Yeah, Bed-Stuy in the house.
Right on.
Yeah, you gotta go to Buffalo to get enough speed to get back to West. It's a slingshot maneuver.
But
Attica's
is
up in, yeah.
So you were around
outside.
there. That's right.
Yes, right. And the civil trials were coming.
Yep.
Got you.
Yeah.
Right, being held.
Well, actually, let's take a big step back. For those who don't know this story, what are the broad strokes here? Like, what's sort of the pitch line?
Yes, the broad strokes are, this is one of the bloodiest confrontations, considered a civil rights confrontation. There's an Eyes on the Prize episode on Attica. So you're having a time of prison writers who are being known in prison, like George Jackson out in San Quentin. Eldridge Cleaver wrote Soul on Ice. So you were having a much more of a political awareness, and you were having this is after the 60s, obviously, but early 70s, where there were prison rebellions going on for demands that were very just humane conditions. At Attica, you got one shower a week, which was not a shower, it was a bucket of water. A bucket of water to do the top half, a bucket of water to do the bottom half, and that's it. Wow. One roll of toilet paper per month. This was a lot of people of color were turning to Islam then, and every meal had pork, which they couldn't eat, things like that. So they were trying to get more humane conditions, trying to get rid of slave labor. They called it the Warden's Plantation, Attica.
Right.
And so a spontaneous rebellion sort of broke out one day after George Jackson had died. A minor event between prisoners that kind of got blown into a big event where people thought that the prisoners were being beaten in isolation, and just a freak chance thing of a door being locked when the guard was walking people out to the yard, didn't think it was going to be locked. All of a sudden, everyone was in the hallway thinking they were going to get beaten, and all of a sudden, someone threw a punch, and the rebellion was on. And it spread all through the prison, and Big Black had an opportunity to leave. He was in the prison laundry where he worked, and he could have left. There was an exit out the back that prisoners were coming in through. And so they came running in, and he would say, "Shit is on, it is on. Cop beat bad at Times Square. They got your friend Tony beat up." Tony was a guard that was friendly with Big Black. So he was
Times Square was the central location where the guards would watch the 4 yards A, B, C, and D, and the 1,500 prisoners ended up taking control of D Yard and holding it for 4 days.
Yeah, and they brought in negotiators, so a lot of it was televised. It was being broadcast out to, on live television at times. And Governor Rockefeller refused to come to Attica, refused to negotiate with the prisoners, and ordered the storming of the prison, which killed over 40 people, including 10 hostages. They immediately put out the lie that the hostages had been killed by prisoners, that they had had their throats slashed, and they even claimed that one of the hostages who was shot had been castrated by Big Black. So they singled Big Black, even though Big Black had actually not been a part of the political team. He was chosen to be head of security for the prisoners during the rebellion, to guard the hostages, to walk the negotiators in and out, and make sure that safety, some kind of safety was kept in the yard with all these people out there, and people who had feuds with the other people, And but because he then became the face, walking in and out, walking negotiators in and out, walking hurt hostages out, they singled him out for the worst torture after the retaking of the prison. And, it was described as an orgy of brutality. He had both his wrists broken. He was laid on a table in the middle of the yard naked, with and they put a football under his neck, said, "Hey, he was a football coach, that's why he was chosen." And they said, "Hey, Mr. Football Coach, you like football so much, when this football hits the ground, you're going to die sooner than you think you're going to die." And they beat him in his testicles. They put out cigarettes on his body. They dropped hot shell casings. They were up on a catwalk above him, dropping their hot shell casings down onto his stomach, spitting down at him, and kept him there for hours like that, and then took him into isolation and beat him.
So this doesn't necessarily on the surface seem like it would be the right material for a comic book. Why did it eventually become that?
Because of this guy.
Because of me. I'm responsible. Jared and I met in 2002 doing a national tour of the Three Musketeers.
I was Athos.
He was Athos.
Nice.
He was Athos, and I was not one of the Musketeers. I was Le Cardinal.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I got cast as villains. Shocking.
Yeah.
Jared had been living with this story since 1997. I had been living with it since 2002. And we had produced a production of Jared's original adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo together. And we had worked on a bunch of different projects. And couple of years ago, June 1996, we were both going through some rough time in our life, and I came to visit Jared in his apartment on the Lower East Side. And I said, listen, this book, I mean, the story needs to be told, and we can do it as a graphic novel. We can get it made. We can get a graphic novel made for $50,000. So a film version of this, a proper film version of this, is going to cost $150 million. And the script had been around. I mean, we'd been shopping it around, and we had heard that it was on Spike Lee's desk at one point. But, I mean, how many scripts does Spike Lee have on his desk?
Yeah.
So I said, listen, man, let's try and translate it into a comic script. We'll find an artist. I know enough people in the business. And strangely enough, Jared actually found our artist, the amazing Ann. And let Jared tell that story.
Yeah, so I was living on East 10th Street in the Village on my 5th floor walk up with my 4 cats, and going to the Strand every day and sitting in there for hours, looking at all everything to find the right person. And one day I went in there, and it was like a magnet across the room. All of a sudden I saw this little pocketbook copy size of Muhammad Ali, a portrait of Muhammad Ali on it. And I began doing that, when you're trying to be first in line, but trying to act like you're not running. You're doing that intermittently, speeding up and slowing down.
Playing it very cool.
Making a beeline. And I just snatched it. And I was, it was love at first sight, I like to say. And
so you didn't pay for it?
Yeah, you still
Yes.
Right. What, this guy's trouble right here. Plus, who's watching the cats? That's my question.
Right?
What are these 4 cats up to?
What are these 4 cats up to? And so I
one of the cats, by the way, which is blind and still catches mice.
Wow, really?
We got to focus this back in. This
No, this is important.
part of the story here. We're getting derailed.
Are the mice also blind?
No, we're talking about
the cat is
upstate Saugerties.
Are they
mice
eating each other? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. Interesting. We'll delve deeper into the cat mystery.
I also want to know more about your production of 3 Musketeers, but let's get forward with that.
And I walked right out of the store, and I immediately called Patrick, and I said, "Have you ever heard of an artist named Amazing Amezian?" He said, "No, I don't."
Great name.
Because this was a reprint of a book that he had done with his wife, Sibylle Titia Delacroix, because he's from Paris. And so had been released in Europe, and they reprinted it and translated it into English. So it was his only book that was in the United States at all. And I found it, and I messaged him thinking, he would never even respond, thinking I was like the Nigerian prince kind of thing.
He's too French to respond to an email.
So some con man from New York is writing me and wants me to do his drawings and da-da-da-da-da. But right away he said, "Send me the script. I'm very interested." And I thought, okay. And he said, "I'll read it this weekend." And I thought, now that's never going to happen.
No one ever does that.
Right. I thought months later I'd be trying to chase him. So I don't know if you remember me. I sent you in December. And 2 days later, I got an email back from him saying, "I'm your guy.
Wow.
I'm your guy."
Wow.
And a drawing, our logo, our original logo. Yeah.
Wow, that's
great.
And we collaborated for almost over 3 years.
Wow.
We never spoke to each other. It was all done via email.
You were just like, I don't want to talk to him.
It was like the mystique was there. It was on, It was working.
It is a romance.
It's
a romance.
We didn't want to break it. We're soulmates. We're soulmates.
But you still never spoke.
I should mention
we finally spoke just a week and a half ago. We finally spoke.
That is crazy. Why'd you break the silence? It was working.
We've been doing the show for 14 years.
It's been a disaster ever since.
We've been doing the show for 14 years. I still haven't spoken to these guys.
That's true. He talks and we just sort of talk over him.
We talk and I just sort of talk over them.
Exactly. It's a relationship.
Yeah.
we did a great interview with Adam McGovern, who I think you guys know Adam, writer of a great comic book called Night World, and he also has a column called High Lowbrow, and we Skyped, and that was the first time we heard Amazian's voice, and he's exactly as we would expect him.
Oh, okay.
It was actually Facebook chat.
Facebook chat, not Skype. So
Thank you for clarifying. We are journalists.
Couldn't get the
Exactly.
And one of the things that when Jared's, told me to look up Amazian, I Google him and I go to his page and I'm looking at his art, and one of the first things I see is he's got a modern retelling of Zatoichi called Clan. Wow. That he did, which is like spectacular, Japanese-based crime comic. And then I'm looking at his other stuff, and he's got this book called Bagmen, which is about Mexican cartel guys. And he's got a book called Cash Cowboys, which is about former SAS guys that go to work for a Blackwater-type organization. And I'm like, this guy is amazing. I mean, he's literally perfect for us. And his knowledge of comic book history, he was saying in the interview how he went back and he read all of the Jerry Conway, Ross Andrews, Spider-Man, Punisher stories because he wanted it to look like a real mid-1970s Bronze Age book.
Yeah,
and his knowledge of the field and his love of classic American, particularly Bronze Age comics is astounding.
Now, this is after that incredibly long journey. It's finally coming out pretty soon.
It's coming out next week.
There you go.
Wow, that is pretty soon.
Yeah. The official drop date is February 18, but we have an early signing at the Strand Bookstore.
Of course, where the story started.
Oh.
All four cats are going to be there. Whatever.
Well, actually, Victor Laval is actually hosting the Q&A with Jared and his stepfather, Dan Myers.
And Big Black's wife, Pearl, will be there.
Oh, awesome.
As part of the panel as well.
Now, that said, though, we do have something new that we could show off from the book that hasn't been shown before.
Yes, this is
one of you want to tee up what this is?
This is absolute news here. We're dropping our promotion video for the book.
News.
Just got approval 5 minutes before we got over here.
Nice.
Breaking news.
Okay, I'm going to move out of the way.
As we were being true New Yorkers and eating a slice of pizza.
Yeah.
There you go.
This is directed by
pizza.
Bob Camp, who is the creator of Ren and Stimpy.
Co-creator of the Ren and Stimpy show.
Very cool.
It is edited by Jason Schofield, who did an incredible job on this, really banged it out to get it ready for tonight.
Yeah.
Music by Alex Tishane and myself. Some of you might recognize the voiceover in it is the voice of Carrie Means, who played Frylock on Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Wow,
so we got some interesting tie-ins for everybody here.
That's great.
And so here it is. This is the first time anywhere anyone is seeing it. Here it is.
Nice.
4 days in 1971 changed the course of American history. This is the true story from the man at the center of it all.
Big black, standing at his hug. There was a man who went against the governor. He took a stand with the brothers of Attica. They made demands for human rights and amnesty. Mr. Rockefeller, can we end this peacefully?
Brother Black, please come to the table. Will someone find Big Black and bring him to the negotiating table?
People of the United States of America. We are the brothers of Attica. We are the brothers of Attica.
The struggle continues. Attica is all of us.
Awesome.
All right. it.
Thank you, guys.
That looks great.
Wow, that was
Yeah, that was so
amazing.
cool.
A privilege to drop it here.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you for bringing it.
If people are listening at home to the podcast, are they going to be able to check it out online?
Yes,
as well?
I'm sure that's going to be shortly. Like I said, we were just obviously on Dropbox links and doing all that.
So people should try to add you on
Yeah,
Dropbox.
we're gonna. I'm
it's
gonna
gonna-
try
yeah.
and get it posted this evening. Definitely before midnight. When the podcast lands tomorrow, it'll all be out. But you can follow us at Stand at Attica, all one word, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
That's awesome.
There we go. And definitely-
Congratulations on a long
amazing.
fought
Thank
Thank you,
project.
guys. Really.
Yeah,
my
it was very, very strange how everything came together because once we had Amazing Ann, we put together our spec package to shop around at conventions, and I was helping organize a convention out on Long Island, which is kind of notorious, known as Icon, which kind of sort of doesn't exist anymore.
Nice. There's a story there.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I got Jared in the right rooms with the right people. Christopher Golden shopped it out
Yes.
and sent it out to Boom originally,
Yep.
to Bryce, and then
Philip.
who was
Philip Sabat.
Philip, sorry, and then our friend Casey Lansdale, who was a writer and a songwriter, and the daughter of Joe R. Lansdale,
Who also has supported this project
Hugely.
from the start and read pages and really gave us a lot of encouragement, along with Bob Camp too, who
Bob
was with us
was
from the beginning, and that's why it was
absolutely
great to bring full circle and have
Yeah.
him direct our video.
Very cool.
Now, before we move on to our next section, because we do need to move on, and we don't have a lot of time to spend on this, I do want to mention Pete LePage, who is one of my co-hosts here on Comic Book Club, is
wow,
a big
shit.
fan. Thank you. Yes,
He's almost talking to you.
Great.
This is exciting.
Very close.
He's
I'm
referencing
looking
you.
at the wall, though. I'm
Yeah,
not
no eye
looking directly
contact.
at
No, we've never made eye contact.
yeah.
It's hard. You guys have glasses. It's hard to find your eyes in there.
Yeah, they're pretty shaded. It's real
very
cool.
shaded. Almost sunglasses.
Pete's a big fan of the Punisher,
Yes,
right? You
yeah.
like the Punisher, the character with the guns from Marvel Comics?
Again, breaking news on the podcast.
Yes, there you go. And one of his favorite actors who played the Punisher was a man named
Thomas Jane.
Thomas Jane, yes.
Now, the only Punisher you accept.
Yes.
No, that's not true.
Now,
after the TV
since
series.
we are running pretty low on time here, I know you did a show with Thomas Jane. Pete, I'm going to allow you one question about Thomas Jane that can go right now. That's all the time we have for it. All right, one question about Thomas Jane. That's it. Hit him with your main big question about Thomas Jane.
What would you say, working with Thomas Jane, would you say is the thing that you were surprised by the most or thing that you liked about him the most?
No context. Just like, is he nice? Is what his question is. Is Thomas nice?
I had the pleasure of meeting Tom through
Calls him Tom.
Very
This is
cool.
starting to feel like two questions.
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of meeting TJ
Oh! We got a friend.
Oh.
We got a friend over here.
through
Someone else has a soulmate.
the brilliant Tim Bradstreet. They have a production
Timmy B?
company together called Raw Studios, the first time I met Tom, I walked up and he was like, "Oh, you're a friend of Timmy B. It's nice to meet you." And I was like, "You have beautiful eyes." I mean, he is like he is stunning. And the most interesting thing about Tom, honestly, he goes barefoot everywhere. He was walking around Stony Brook University campus during this convention in the pouring rain in the middle of March, barefoot.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
He sounds fine. He sounds
But
like he's doing fine.
He's a really brilliant guy. He's a hell of a writer, and which a lot of people don't know, and very dedicated to his craft.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. TJ. All right, we're going to move on with our next section, which we like to call the Stack.
Yeah.
And in the Stack, we're going to talk about a couple of comic books that came out this past week, give our quick little thoughts on them.
They're quick and little, these
Quick,
thoughts.
tiny little thoughts. Miles Morales, Spider-Man, number 15 from Marvel Comics. Whose loosey-goosey cover is this?
I don't know. What does that mean?
Yours? I don't know. It's just a very loose cover. I'll pass it over here.
Don't
if you wanna
blame
take a
me.
look.
Blame the staples.
Who liked this book? What do you guys want to chat about with it?
Miles Morales is Spider-Man, and as the cover says,
You read the title. That's so cool.
so this is all about he lets his journal get into the wrong hands.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah. The biggest villain of all
is somebody reading your journal. I know.
Sounds
other
like there's a story there. We don't have time for it.
Yeah.
But Saladin Ahmed is writing the book, and I adore him. As a matter of fact, we sent him an advanced preview of Big Black Stand in Attica, and we're waiting for a blurb. But he's great, and I was telling Jared that he really needs to read Saladin's Black Bolt series.
Very
So
good.
good.
Which
Yes,
is
dude.
a prison story. So if you guys haven't read that book is
Great
fantastic.
book.
Yeah.
Really
One
excellent.
of the things that I think he's doing really well on Miles Morales is just really digging into the characters like he does everywhere with every single one of the books. So it's good. I actually think he is probably doing a better job at figuring out the character of Miles Morales in a certain way than Brian Michael Bendis did.
Wow, bold.
Kind of. Well, like Brian Michael Bendis said it and then ran with that.
Yeah.
But Saladin is able to grow it in a certain way.
And sort of go backwards and forwards at the same time.
Exactly.
This is going into a lot of the sort of Green Goblin. The Green Goblin of the former Ultimate Universe is like a giant Hulk monster, and that's
The same one that we saw in Into the Spider-Verse, that
Yeah,
version
exactly.
of Green Goblin, yeah.
and so this is going back into that while also moving the character forward, and it's really good.
Yeah. Great book. Definitely pick it up. Next one to talk about, also from Marvel, Daredevil, number
Yeah.
17.
Yeah.
I know this is about the character Daredevil.
Right.
Correct.
So
Right.
in this book, we have Daredevil who he stopped wearing the Daredevil outfit,
Yes.
costume, if you will. And
It is a costume?
like other people in the community have been taking up and being Daredevil to fight their own
crimes.
Yeah, their own
Their personal crimes.
Yeah,
Yeah, a
and
bunch of criminals punching themselves right in the face.
yeah. You know, everybody's wearing the Daredevil mask, but here he's trying to come back to it, and he's got like it's kind of more of a fancy bougie version of the Daredevil outfit, and I hope
That's just a regular suit he's wearing.
Well, he's wearing a regular suit with a fancy mask, and I was like, "Come on, man, you're better than this." But yeah, I think this is very interesting. I'll be excited when we get Daredevil back to being Daredevil, but it's kind of fun to watch this transition happen.
It's really Chip Zdarsky's writing this right now, and it's really interesting the way he's like scraped away a lot of the old stuff, like him like literally being Daredevil, and just is bringing Hell's Kitchen is much more sort of important. He worked with Elektra to steal $1 billion from other criminals, and then he just gave it to like bodegas in Hell's Kitchen.
That's a lot of egg sandwiches.
That's a lot of egg sandwiches, as they
Nothing
say.
like a good egg sandwich.
But I want to talk about, there's a big argument he has with Foggy here, which I'm sure, like, what is that like when you see Foggy, who's your number one?
Foggy Nelson's one of the greater characters.
Great character.
Yeah.
And like Matt Murdock.
Yeah,
the
Pete
character-
doesn't rank characters. He has circles of characters.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like 9 circles of hell.
It's hard because they have such a great relationship. They're in trying times right now because, Daredevil just abuses his friendship. And, Foggy's constantly picking up the slack and putting things together and doing the things Daredevil doesn't have time for, So
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
hear that. 'Cause
what are
I
you
feel
talking about
I
here,
feel like
Pete?
I feel like the Foggy of the podcast. I know exactly what
you
you're
do?
talking about. I feel like the Foggy here.
okay.
So like, I
that's
totally
interesting.
I identify with what you're talking about.
oh, good. I'm glad
It's it's so weird that you're able to put yourself in my headspace and feel like the Foggy, because I don't think you identify with that at all.
No, definitely
not.
don't.
Based on what you just said, I feel like you don't identify with that at all.
I don't know what you just said.
I gotta say,
I got to say that, and Jorge Fornes, who I've never seen his stuff before, the art's very evocative of David Mazzucchelli.
Yeah.
His run on Daredevil, which was the last
Legendary.
Frank Miller wrote the book.
Yeah.
this book is real good. We talk about this a million times on the show, but there's something about Daredevil that just brings out the best in every single writer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'll just add, I know everyone was curious. I agonized long and hard about naming my blind cat, and I really, really thought of naming him Maddie Murdoch. And then I was going to go DD, but I ended up with CC. And,
CC, so close to DD. Almost a parody of DD.
So you see how I got there, right?
Yes, right.
So I know
And we
everyone
should
was
say your
wondering.
cat also can has a superpower of hearing.
He's
everything.
a mouser. He's
Yeah,
incredible.
he's a mouser.
He can time jumps perfectly. He, sometimes something. I thought it was going to be like that old joke, rearrange the furniture, and he would be all bumping into things. Not at all. It's like he's got all Daredevil senses.
Does he keep sleeping with the wrong women?
And
No,
let me ask you,
that's my job.
Wow. Let me ask you: is there another worse cat named Foggy?
His name in the shelter was Froggy.
Oh, there we go.
Pete's gonna
Just when you thought talking about cats wouldn't pay off.
It does.
All right, let's finish up here with money shot number 4 from Vault Comics. What?
Nice, pretty cool. Now you're making eye contact with me after you say that. Please, this is the last thing I want right now.
Let's talk about money shot. This is a great book.
I love this book. This book is
Tim Seeley's writing it.
yes, with Sarah
Beatty.
Beatty.
Yep.
And they, it's the premise of this book is that research scientists. That's the way you say that word. I understand science. They don't have any funding, so the way they do that is by it's set in the sort of near future. They sleep with aliens and film it for pornography, and it's great.
The things people are willing to do for science.
That's exactly. That's a
And
dedicated scientist.
you should all follow Sarah Beatty on Facebook. I mean on Twitter. If you don't,
On Skype.
She's brilliantly funny, comedian, and she makes no bones about the fact that she is quite well endowed. And flaunts it on Twitter. Actually, God bless her, very very proudly.
This got weird.
This book is very dirty and funny in the right way. But like we talked about the first issue on the show as well.
I believe so.
Yes.
The thing is that they don't forget about the characters at the same time.
And honestly, the premise is that,
Yeah.
and there is sex in it, but it is this issue in particular is mostly the adventure side of it, and the fact that it's just characters coming together and trying to work out what they're dealing with.
It could be an easy joke.
Yes.
They work
Exactly.
hard at it and dig a lot deeper with the characters, which is what makes it a good book.
Good.
There you go.
Good stuff.
Yeah, there we go. That's it for the stack.
Yeah.
All right. We are going to move on with our next section, which is my favorite section because you make it up. It's your audience questions. And for this, I'm going to come out to you all. All you have to do is ask a question, either for our amazing guests or for Pete or Justin, and you'll get some free comic books.
The questions are just for us?
Not me. I'm not answering questions today. No
Okay,
questions.
great.
No, I'll answer questions. All right.
Wow,
There we go.
okay. Wow, really
I
turned
actually
around.
saw your hand come up first over
Nice.
here. Why don't you give us your name and your question?
Hi, I'm John, and I've actually got somebody remotely who wants to ask Justin something.
Okay.
So
That's weird.
Yeah.
yeah,
Sounds
so
ominous.
It's going to be terrible.
It's about the puke machine.
Hello?
Hey, Josh.
Oh, this is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got Justin on. You want to ask him something?
Private phone call.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's more of a statement, though. But, Justin, Starman is my favorite classically trained actor.
That's
Come on,
that's very good. Well, I can't just give it because it's a good answer. That's
not
very good. No, he's technically not. Huh? So Pete, for many years, had a secret, one of many, but the one he revealed to us is he was running a secret quiz, a Punisher quiz that once unlocked, he had a prize hidden in his dirty laundry, Thomas Jane reference, over off to the side, and then then Alex did one for Cypher, which is a character that people don't really care about, but so my favorite character, Starman, I'm doing a Starman quiz. That's a great, you have to unlock it with a key phrase.
Yeah.
And that is a great guess, but he wasn't an actor. He's an antique dealer. Ooh. So that's...
Good try, though.
That's
Thanks for
very
calling.
good.
Thanks for calling in.
Very good.
And look for my forthcoming quiz about Wood God.
Oh, there we go. That was amazing, though. I love that.
I love that,
do
too.
we have any other questions? You, sir, what's your name? What's your question?
My name is Kevin, and
Hey, Kevin.
so like this book, deals, with an event in history, and comics have been used to, deal with some, some serious, events in the past directly or through metaphor. What are some historical events that you think can really be explored in the comic medium that maybe haven't?
Well, Jared, why don't you tell them about the 2 scripts that you've written that we're looking to get done?
Well,
Feels
again,
awful promoting.
now obviously this is again biographical storytelling. So I think more in terms of characters that would fit sort of a comic book world, that you can make their world a comic book world, and they exist as sort of comic book heroes. And I tend to like people that are a little bit unknown to history, but then you delve into it and everyone starts going, how do I not know this story? So I have written a script about a Civil War character named Ely Parker, who actually was a Seneca Indian, was the last great Seneca Indian chief, and he became friends with Ulysses S. Grant when Grant was down and out and living in Illinois and working in a leather shop for his father, and they became friends. And when the Civil War started up, he ended up joining Grant's staff. He had the best penmanship, and so he actually wrote out the surrender agreement at Appomattox Courthouse.
Oh, wow.
But prior to that, because he had learned English so well, he had gone and visited presidents, starting with James K. Polk, and on behalf of the Seneca tribe, trying to negotiate staying in New York, which he was successful. Part of the Iroquois Nation. So he's one. The other is I have a biography of the first black baseball player to play for the Yankees, Elston Howard. And it really is sort of like a Jackie Robinson story 8 years later. He had been friends with Jackie Robinson, and Jackie, when he saw Jackie at an event, and Elston went up to him and said, Jackie, thank you for all you've done for all of us. And he said, you deserve more credit than I do. And Elston was like, what? He was like, you had it harder than I did. And he was like, how could you say this? And he said, the Dodgers wanted me. The Yankees didn't want you. Yeah. And so
the Yankees were the second to last team to have a black player in the league, and the last team was the Boston Red Sox.
Boston Red Sox. Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to say also about historical events, one of the people who's helped support Big Black Stand in Attica is Andrew Aiden, who was the co-writer of March with Congressman John Lewis.
Yeah, which inspired me. I always kept out while I was working on, just to thumb through it. Yeah. And just going again, if you go in another direction, The Nam was one of the books that I read a lot and was inspired by.
Doug Murray and Christopher Golden. Michael Golden illustrated. That was one of the books that
Bob Camp had worked on actually as well, and our friend Larry Hama
was the editor, of course.
Larry Hama, who's also been an incredible support and inspiration.
I have a question.
Dude, it's awesome.
How long ago did you plant Kevin in our audience to ask that question?
Thank you.
I got to say, that's the historical event I want to see you come.
Exactly.
We'll take care of you after the show, Kevin.
Yeah.
Finally, big
Good
payoff.
job. Good tee up. Do we have any other questions? You, sir, why don't you come on down? This is a nice short mic cord. What's your name? What's your question?
How you guys doing? I'm Jesus. Quick question. So now that the book's out, people can go out and see and read about what happened. Do you think it might help to push to finally get the well-deserved movie out there at some point?
Yeah. Hopefully? Well, and there have been other film versions, but none that actually really, they all become much more metaphorical and some of them have been successful. And there's a lot of great documentaries. There are the Cinda Firestone. I'm doing an event at my own hometown library, Sorgetes, New York, where they're going to show Cinda Firestone's 1974 documentary, the original one. So there are. I would love to see it as an animated film. Actually, that really is I feel like the comic book world has really done a lot to bring this story in a way that it loses some of its heaviness, and it has a little bit more of a heroic nature to it. And even though it's a horrible, tragic event in U.S. history, I feel like when Patrick suggested it to me, I didn't sleep that night. I rolled and tossed and turned, and I began envisioning it, and I thought, wow, I can't believe it. I called him the next morning. I was like, okay, we had to start doing this. Let's get I had to go and get a lot of technique books, Will Eisner's books, Scott McCloud's
Scott
book.
McCloud on Stand Comics.
Yeah.
Not a technique book. Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips, Criminal.
Oh yeah, and I read
Cowards,
and that was really
Yeah,
what
good.
gave me the courage to do a first person commentary, which
awesome.
was had been lacking in all the other drafts.
Yeah.
And
that's great.
And once we had the spec package to shop around with Amazian's art, the support that we got from people in the business. Mike Gold and Comic Mix, they were originally interested.
Glenn Howman, Joe Corallo, Molly Jackson.
Dark Horse was interested. I had spoken with Dennis Kitchen, and Dennis Kitchen was like, "Wow, this is exactly the kind of thing that I would publish."
But truly, Boom coming in. Boom coming in and supporting us to write the story in a truthful way.
Yeah.
And the editors that we had at Boom, Sierra Hahn and Alison Gronowitz, are to me just as important as any of us on this project. They really whipped it into shape in a way that it just stunned me. They really, I owe these women so much. They did an incredible job. I can't say enough about them. They're rock stars in my world.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I think that is all the time we have for questions. So now I'm going to
Nice.
turn it over to Pete LePage for trivia.
All right.
Trivia.
This is the part we give back to you, the lovely audience. It's an opportunity to win $25 free in the form of a gift card to Midtown Comics. Because if you had $25, you go to a comic shop. Who would like $25 free? Simple raising of the hand. Simple. First hand up guy.
Stand up guy.
First
Very
hand
good. Do you
up
have any more
guy.
phone
And by
calls,
the
or is it
way,
actually
Big Black Stand in
This is actually
Attica
me.
is available for pre-order at Midtown Comics.
All right.
And it
Way to
retails for
bring it
only
home.
$19.99.
No, that's why I'm here.
Awesome. And you can pick up the latest issue of Spider-Man, too.
All right, sir. Remind us of your name.
I'm John.
John, audience John.
Hey, John.
You're
What's
going to be
up,
rooting
John?
for John
Come on,
here.
John.
That's right.
So today's trivia is on topical comic news. Okay?
Finally.
Yep. Okay, so question number one, please listen to all three answers, then make your choice, okay? Who is going to be writing the new Squadron Supreme comic coming out in May? Is it A, Mark Waid, B, Joe Quesada, or is it C, Christopher McDonald? So it's either A, or you could be wrong.
I'm feeling pretty confident to say.
A is correct.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, here we go. Question number two. We got a teaser image for the new Dark Knight's Metal series. It shows Superman with long hair and knuckle dusters. What is the hashtag that Capullo used online? Was it A, hashtag heavy metal, B, hashtag death metal, or was it C, hashtag Will Wheaton? So it's either A or you could select B.
It's B.
B is correct.
Yeah.
Death metal.
Not phased by the star power coming off Pete LePage and just going right to the answers.
All right, here we go. Question number three. We know Punchline is a new villain for what upcoming comic arc, in Batman this May? Is it A, Joker War, B, Return of the Jokers, or is it C, Clancy Brown? So it is either A, and you win $25, or you could be completely wrong and walk away with nothing.
Go with A.
A
Yeah,
is correct.
John.
Nice.
Bravo.
John.
Well
Congratulations.
Well done.
Incredible. As we all know, and we all know this, of course, Pete
Yes.
hides a secret quiz inside of his quiz that is always a Robin Williams movie for some reason. The third answers add up to that Robin Williams movie. What are they, Pete?
They're Christopher McDonald.
Sure.
Will Wheaton.
Yep.
I believe that was hashtag Will Wheaton.
Thank you. And Clancy Brown.
Great. Does anybody know what Robin Williams?
Everyone's favorite actors.
Kevin?
Just from the cast, I'm going to guess animated, so I'm going to... Ooh, well, there goes Ferngully.
Yeah, it's not rubber. The name of it is
Glue.
Nope.
Okay.
Flubber, you were correct, sir.
Flubber.
It's Flubber.
Yeah.
Great clue, great clue. As we all know,
Wow.
tomorrow is New Comic Book Day. We
Will
recommend
we-
you go to Midtown Comics because they've been nice enough to sponsor the show. Pete, what are you looking forward to?
Well, a lot of great stuff coming out. I'm definitely looking forward to Dip. Ascender number 9.
Oh, I thought you were going to sing a little song there.
And then
like a little barbershop quartet song.
Wonder Woman number 751.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Kicking it off.
Great.
Nothing else?
No, that's it.
Great.
Okay.
Justin, Dip. What are you looking forward to?
Dip. I'm looking forward to. The comic that is a Mother of Demons, Ghost
Okay,
Rider,
great.
Mother of
All right.
Demons from
Yeah,
Marvel
there we go.
Comics, coming out tomorrow. It's about the Ghost Rider sort of mythos has been building in the Marvel universe for the last couple months, and this puts a pin in it and starts to move it into its own title.
And we will have a review of that in our Stack podcast.
Great, that's great
That
news.
debuts Wednesdays at 9 a.m. in the Comic Book Club feed, as well as its own feed. Oh, Dip. I'm looking forward to...
Dip.
Oh, jeez. I really wish I had prepared for this. Oh, God. Oh, I wish this section, it's a surprise. I
It's a
didn't know it was
surprise
coming.
section. We never do.
Stop
this.
milking
Never
it.
do
What are you
this.
looking forward to?
Alienated number 1 from Boom Studios is
Yes.
coming out.
Boom.
I'll spoil a little bit of a review, but man, I love this book. You'll find out more about it in the Stack podcast.
Spoiled a very little bit of it.
But yeah, then it's about a group of kids going to the woods. They encounter something there, and what happens after that. But it's so creatively done. It's a really great package. Definitely highly recommend picking it up. For you guys, plug your stuff again. What should people check out?
Well, definitely, of course, Big Black Stand at Attica, which is available for pre-order from Boom Studios. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Target, local bookseller. We're doing a signing at the Strand Bookstore next Monday night, the 17th, and it will be on stands on the 18th. But it is available on Comixology tomorrow.
Whoa.
And also our good friend Joe Corallo, who introduced me to the Comic Book Club podcast many moons ago.
Nice.
Him and his collaborator Liana Kangas, their book She Said Destroy is coming out in trade paperback, the first 5 issues. I cannot recommend that book enough. It's a really cool Swords and Planet allegory featuring the Celtic goddess, the Morrigan, versus the Celtic sun goddess, Bridget, who is in control of the solar system. And the only cult left that can fight Bridget is the goddess of death and war, the Morrigan. So it's a really interesting retelling of Celtic mythology.
And I definitely want to plug Miss Davis, which is my our artist Amezian, his work that is just dropped like a week ago.
Yeah.
It's in Europe. It's in French, but it is one of the most gorgeous books I've ever seen. Done with his wife, like I said, Sibylle Titia Delacroix. It's just a brilliant book.
Yeah, a
Just
biography
brilliant.
of Angela Davis, and it is magnificent. If you
have
go
to see it.
if you go to our social media stuff, you can find Amazing Ann. He's also on Facebook and Twitter and so on and so forth. And we've shared some of the art from it. And just go to his website, and his name is spelled Ameziane.
Yeah. And then we'll be beginning our book tour. And after the Strand, we're at the New York Public Library at the
Nice.
Grand Central branch the following
big
Saturday.
Yeah,
for the
The
Lion,
hub.
so you're going to ride on the lion.
Yep.
It's one of my favorite places, yeah. And then we'll be hitting upstate around my hometown, Sorgeties, Woodstock, New York, doing a signing at the Golden Notebook, Inquiring Minds of Sorgeties. We're going to be out at Nassau.
Yeah, Nassau Community College, CradleCon at the Cradle of Aviation Museum, which is right next door to Nassau Community College, May 30th and 31st.
And we'll be doing Book
yeah.
Expo.
And
at
Book
the Javits
Expo, which
Center
is
in May.
the 28th and 29th at the Javits Center.
So
Awesome.
thanks.
Yeah.
Look
So
for
many
all of those
things.
things. A couple of things to plug on our end before we wrap up here. As mentioned, we have our Lock and Key podcast, Lock and Key Unlocked, so do check that out. I'm sure that Puke Machine story is coming very soon.
Definitely.
That's the main draw of the podcast, I would say, beyond recapping Lock and Key, the excellent series that's currently on Netflix. Also, we have Riverdale After Dark. Our Riverdale podcast goes up every Wednesday after that show. We've also launched Katie Keencast, a Katie Keen podcast that goes up every Thursday after that show. I'm sure more podcasts to come, right, Pete?
Sure.
Pete, anything else you want to plug?
Yeah, friend us on Facebook so you get to know about the amazing guests we have on our show.
Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at Comic Book Live, and a shout out to Cece and Froggy and those other two cats that nobody knows the names of. They're going to be pissed.
Check us out at comicbookclublive.com for this podcast and more. You can subscribe and listen on iTunes, Android, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice. And if you have it on iTunes, please do comment. That helps us out quite a bit. Also, patreon.com/comicbookclub to support this show and many more. We have a bunch of fun bonuses there. You can get on our private Slack.
The way you say that,
I'm winking.
Yeah, nice. That's not helping. Again, you're making eye contact at the weirdest times with me.
Okay, I don't know who you guys are, so you can check that out. A couple of people we want to thank. We want to thank Jared Matt for being on the show. Boothman Pride. But most of all, we want to thank all of y'all. We are here every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Totally free. Please tell your friends. Good night. Thanks
Good night,
for coming
guys.
out, everybody.
Thank you.
So
Thank
much.
you.
Whoa.